It had fascinated families and school groups for 19 years, but in the last 10 months, developers from all over Australia have eyed off the Newcastle Regional Museum. After a long national sales campaign, Newcastle City Council has finally struck a deal with a well-known local businessman. Con Constantine, who owns the store building right across the road in Hunter Street, has added to his property portfolio. It's believed to have cost him around $7 million.
It is a lot of money. The value of the site has certainly been realised. Council's pleased about that, and we look forward to development in Hunter Street West.
The Heritage Brewery buildings which housed the museum are situated on the corner of a much larger site, which also includes the S&W Miller building. It's 12,200 square metres altogether, with 4 street frontages.
This site, though, on the corner is a really important site for the city. The heritage buildings will be fully protected.
According to the council, they exchanged contracts with Mr Constantine's company Almona Proprietary Limited on Friday with a 6-month settlement. Profits from the sale will be injected directly into the development of a new museum inside 3 of the Honeysuckle Railway Workshop buildings.
There's money there now for that, so that's good news, and we're underway with that project and keen to see a new regional museum open for the city. That'll be marvellous.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It doesn't look all that different to other CT scanners, but this machine is at the forefront of a new technological frontier, where its predecessor could capture a single image or slice at a time. It can take 64 slices.
The scanner will be great for trauma patients, the elderly, children, because of its ability to take very fine scans, as well as the speed with which it takes those scans.
Previously, patients would be on the scan table for up to an hour. With this machine, it's all over in a matter of minutes. 3-dimensional computerised images allow quicker and more accurate diagnosis, so treatment can begin.
Broken bones that may not have been visible on plain x-rays. We're seeing tumours, organs that are bleeding after trauma, clots in the lungs, and a number of other applications.
The $900,000 scanner will operate around the clock, giving Maitland people access to diagnostic services close to home. As for the old machine, it's set for a new life in a third world country.
Laser technology has simplified and improved so many medical procedures for humans, and it can now do the same for our animal friends. Lambton Veterinary Clinic brought in the cutting-edge technology from the United States, and Bindi here is among the first pets to go under the laser.
Well, it makes for quicker surgery time and less pain for the animal. We're not swabbing, we're not looking for bits and pieces all the time. We can see clearly, we can be precise, we can be accurate with our cutting.
The laser replaces a blade with a beam of light, and as it moves through the tissue, it seals nerve endings and blood vessels.
Any surgery that we do is going to have no hemorrhaging, there's going to be less pain for the animal, there's less swelling, and that's going to mean a better recovery for the pets.
But the device came at a cost of $36,000.
But I'm sure it's going to be well worth it when the clients see the results that we're getting.
Lucy Wilson, NBN News. We all have our bad habits, but when they collectively add $300 million to the state's electricity bills and push up greenhouse gas emissions, it's time to pay more attention. Energy Australia recently surveyed people across Sydney, the Central Coast and the Hunter to see where we're going wrong.
A few of the bad habits we found was that 28% of homes never switch off their computer. It's running 24/7. Such a simple thing to do, to switch it off at the end of the night.
And more than a quarter of us put the dishwasher on before it's full. But there's more.
82% of homes are overheating in winter. We would suggest that thermostats don't need to be higher than about 21 degrees.
Doesn't sound that warm, but every extra degree will add 10% to your heater's running costs. By making these simple changes, we can save an average of $120 a year on our energy bills. Lucy Wilson, NBN News.
My job's to shift the ball, and I shouldn't have any excuse for getting caught with the ball. That's my job to get rid of it. So, yeah, it'll be interesting.
You felt cold just watching the Knights wade into their recovery session. But if the teeth were chattering today, Steve Simpson's were fair income rattling yesterday, care of rooster prop Mark O'Mealy, the man they call Ogre, catching Simpson flush. Gritting his teeth to complete the game, X-rays cleared the Origin forward of a fracture today.
Pulled up a little bit sore, mate. I couldn't get through a stake at the moment. It's a bit sore as far as that's concerned, but no, I'm fine.
That keeps him in the frame for Origin selection, but he knows that side is far from certain.
It'd be great to be part of that last game, and it's going to be a great occasion, I think, and one that New South Wales, with a bit of luck, are going to win the game.
Ben Cross receiving a far kinder workout on his thumb today, but it was yesterday's game examination which gives him confidence he could get through Origin 3.
It was a bit scratchy yesterday, first game back, but I thought I did some good things too. But yeah, it'd be just nice to get a few games back to back leading into it. But yeah, fingers crossed now, I guess, and just wait and see what happens tomorrow.
Jesse Royal and Corey Patterson, the two main injury concerns for Newcastle out of yesterday's loss to the Roosters in a game both sides were guilty of a higher account.
Because the effort was great yesterday, you can't knock that at all. I think it's just the execution and a few different things at times that really cost us.
The representative player merry-go-round continues this week for the Jets as they trial potential signings. After seeing limited game time at the weekend, their two visiting Italians have a few weeks yet to impress.
They need to get accustomed to the hours here and what we do and sort of feel at home a little bit so they can express themselves, and similar to what happened with Song.
And isn't he shaping as a real success story? The young Korean was a late addition last season and is showing the benefits of a good off-season. Scoring the winner in the weekend's trial, the coach reckons with a full preparation under his belt this time around, Song's best is yet to come.
He's improving all the time with the physicality of what the Australian Football League is like. So we feel he's going to be a pretty valuable piece of the jigsaw this year.
Having returned to Melbourne, defender Anton Kovacic did enough at the weekend to remain in the frame. However, Yanni Galanos won't be coming back. James Holland's footballing odyssey, meanwhile, continues, taking him to Darwin this week along with three other Jets for the Olyroos. All this after he started for the Socceroos last night against China, while Ante Kovic and Jade North are expected to join the Jets later this week.
Been a lot of travel and a lot of training involved, so they can have a little bit of a respite and a bit of time off.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
It's one of the prettiest and quietest corners of Lake Macquarie, but a fight is brewing over plans for a large tourist, residential and marina complex. Keith Johnson wants to build a marina, heliport, 200 houses and 150 units, some in blocks up to 6 stories high. But many locals say it's too big.
That'll set a precedent, and we could find that the whole of the lake will be under pressure for high-rise development.
To us, it's a very big overdevelopment. 308 berth marina. Over the top.
Lake Macquarie Mayor Greg Piper agrees.
This proposal is way outside of what anybody on council or the local community had anticipated.
And it's the Mayor's comments that have upset the developer. Because the council is assessing the plan on behalf of the state government, Keith Johnson is worried he won't get a fair hearing.
We've heard what one person's view is, but I'm hoping that we get a fair go through the proper assessment process.
Mr Johnson will ask that the assessment is taken out of council's hands, and he's also busy putting up green signs to counter the locals' red ones. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Built in 1890, the existing courts complex is overcrowded and outdated. For more than a decade, there have been calls for an internal overhaul and expansion, or an entirely new precinct.
The beautiful heritage courthouse was built for the way things were 120 years ago and gradually has been added upon, but that building as a whole doesn't comply with contemporary building codes. The jury and judicial rooms are inadequate.
The state and federal governments are now agreeing to work together. Welcome news for the Law Society. While the state funding won't be secure until the 2009-2010 budget, the co-location of the federal and state facilities could provide a modern $120 million centre covering 25,000 square metres.
Both the federal and state governments are looking at bringing upwards of $60 million each for their new courts precincts. It's absolutely essential that the money is pooled so that we get the best result.
And the next step is finding a site.
The preferred location is the eastern end within the existing legal precinct.
16 other sites are being examined. An alternative may be sought within a few blocks of the current courts. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Six weeks ago, a cold snap saw Burdekin Park's flying fox population take flight, but now they're coming back.
I think you could get a pretty good bet on that they will come back in greater numbers.
The colony has stripped many of the heritage-listed park's trees and upset nearby residents with its noise and smell. Along with the animals' return, Council has received more disappointing news, with Federal Environment Minister Peter Garrett refusing to fund a relocation program.
Primarily they're saying we're not going to fund you to get rid of the bats because our job is to protect the bats.
Over the past 4 years, Singleton Council has spent $160,000 on the problem and has obviously had no success. Now the council's planning to spend a further $180,000 to try and get the flying foxes out of Burdekin Park.
What we'll do is implement the program that was put in place through Dr. Nelson's report, and in essence, it's like corralling the bats.
Meanwhile, Council won't be reducing its numbers from 12 to 9 anytime soon.
We got notification last night from the Minister that the legislation hasn't passed the Parliament to allow council numbers to be reduced.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Farmers won't often tell you they're doing well, but after surviving the drought, it seems the northern New South Wales dairy industry has finally turned a corner. After 10 years, milk is once again a valuable commodity.
There's a big demand for milk and that's pushed prices up. Australia exports quite a lot of its dairy products, so we're very much influenced by the world price.
Having completed the Cows Create Careers program, some of these students from Hunter High Schools are hoping dairy farming will always be a career choice. But with the price of fertiliser, diesel fuel and grain also on the rise, more tough times could lay ahead.
There's been a number of farmers have cut back because of the drought, so that has helped, but we're going to need continuing rises, otherwise we'll just get squeezed out of the industry.
The high cost of establishing a new farm could see the industry disappear from some parts of the state.
When our family first came there was about 60 dairy farms in the area, and we're now the last one in the Vasey area.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
With Jeremy's photo behind him on stage, it was a brave tribute by one of his best mates. The bagpipes played by Jesse Lee began the memorial. He was also swept into the ocean at Fraser Park a week ago, but Jesse was rescued and winched from the huge surf. With arms raised, friends and family remembered Jeremy with song and verse. As a counsellor for Christian group Youth with a Mission, the congregation was told in a visual presentation that Jeremy was a kid magnet. With a love for skating, he had an amazing impact on younger people, many of them attending today's memorial. A friend and colleague said he was one of a kind. He stood out from the crowd but made you feel part of it. His trademark hat was worn by almost everybody in honour of him, along with a lime armband, his favourite colour. Jeremy's father Daryl, who had travelled from Alaska, was stoic, thankful for the 23 years he had with his son. He also said Jeremy was about to propose to his girlfriend.
You know, he was very much in love with Christina. Over the last couple of weeks, he called me up and he goes, "Well, I think I found a ring."
It's like no exaggeration. Like, he called me as soon as I got up. We talked until we went to sleep.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Yeah, he was over the moon, as you'd expect. You know, him and Mum were in a bit of shock themselves. So, you know, it makes you feel pretty good when you see your parents proud like that. Get a lot of confidence that Bellamy's put faith in me, and I'm just looking forward to repaying that and doing my best. I think it's the best arena you can ever play at, and to get this opportunity so young and in the deciding game, you know, I'm that pumped. I can't wait.
Bound for England next year, Danny Badiris is having a season of lasts, and in terms of origin, next week is it for him. The emotion that comes with that will drive him this week.
Something I reflected on the way down, I guess, on the F3. It's my last time coming in, but I'll be very content if everything goes my way and the team's way on Wednesday night.
Just don't make it about me, says the skipper.
You can't afford to waste that sort of energy doing it for someone else. It's for yourself. It's too hard a game, and you don't get these occasions too many times to win Origin Series.
Given his level of respect amongst peers, that's easier said than done.
From a personal point of view, I'd like to see Bedsy holding the trophy above his head after the game, so I'll be doing everything I can to try and make that happen.
Ben Cross is playing as much for the coach and selectors as he is for teammates. After breaking his thumb in Game 1, he's been recalled at the expense of Knights teammate Steve Simpson.
I know what Ben's strengths are and I know what he brings to a team, and that's what we expect of him.
To repay the faith that he's shown him, he's just, all I have to do for the team is just get out there and give my all and do whatever I can for him.
As for that last encounter in Brisbane,
We've spoken about today. We'll look at some footage this afternoon, and that's it. We've got to put it to bed, and at the end of the day, it's 1-1.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. So much for a break after his tour of duty with the Socceroos. Ante Kovic preferring to return to work for his club than take a holiday, despite an intense 5 weeks with Australia's World Cup qualifying campaign. While frustrated not to see game time in the recent cluster of matches, it's only fired the big shot stopper up for the next section of qualifiers.
I've been involved for a while now, and you can be on the outer and get back in, and I'm confident I'll be there.
As for his long-term future at Newcastle, that's a different story. Contracted until the end of this season, the glove man has been offered an extension, but before they snare his signature, he's keen to see who else the Jets sign up.
I don't want the team just to be successful this year. If I do re-sign or do want to stay, I'd like to know that there's a team there that's going to be around for 2-3 years, and we're challenging for the title each time.
Meanwhile, new recruit Sean Ontong faces up to 3 months on the sideline with specialists to operate on an injured ankle later this week.
He'd only been on parole for 12 days following a lengthy jail sentence. His taste of freedom was short-lived. After a high-speed chase, Anthony Cashman jumped off the Hexham Bridge. Police commandeered a boat to make their arrest. The Goulburn man appeared in Newcastle District Court today, sentenced on a robbery charge. The judge also took into account dangerous driving and driving while disqualified. Before the police chase, Cashman grabbed car keys from a frightened man in the Coles car park at Taree. In relation to the robbery, Anthony Cashman today told the court, "I am very sorry for doing that. I did scare him. I didn't mean to do it." In sentencing, Judge Hosking said Cashman had a poor criminal history and that the robbery was bad enough, but he was on parole at the time. Along with 2 years jail, he was disqualified from driving until March 2011. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. A repeat of that June long weekend last year is a real possibility. With much of Newcastle developed around a large estuary on low-lying land, Councillor Barbara Gaudry is concerned lessons haven't been learnt.
As a city, a major problem that we face with the predictions that are being made about climate change is flash flooding and flash flooding, because we are on a floodplain.
And that's no exaggeration. Her view is supported by weather experts.
It could happen again, and we are going to the cyclic weather patterns that can happen again.
In a notice of motion, Councillor Gaudry is calling for an urgent briefing from climate change experts in the state government.
We need to be developing strategies and plans to manage those kinds of risks as best we can as a council.
She wants Newcastle to follow in the footsteps of councils along Sydney's coastline, as well as Lake Macquarie City Council. They're examining the risks and planning for impacts to protect life and properties.
If you would imagine more intense storms more often, and also with a sea level rise of up to 1 metre, what the impacts of that would be.
In other council news, a proposal to use closed-circuit television cameras in the inner city has been rejected due to high costs. Last night, Newcastle Council agreed to call on the state government to release results of a recent safety audit so councillors can better evaluate the need for CCTV. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
While securing a home in the Hunters rental market is still competitive, it's becoming easier with vacancy rates up.
We've jumped up to nearly 3%, so that's for the inner city, which is incredible, seeing that we were down on about 1% only a few months ago.
The latest statistics from the Real Estate Institute of Australia show vacancy rates from across the Hunter and Newcastle have been steadily rising since February. A variety of factors have led to the increase, such as people moving back into their storm-damaged homes and, more recently, the end of the university semester.
We're finding that inner city properties, especially units and apartments, there's a freeing up of those, so that's good for people that are genuinely looking for accommodation in the city.
But not such good news for those looking to rent a house, with the region still experiencing a dire shortage of family homes, and the increased availability of rentals won't last for long.
As the university intake comes comes back in there probably around the end of July and August, you'll find that that rate will go back down again.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. Spread over 346 hectares, the proposed eco-friendly industrial estate will be known simply as Singleton Green.
What we're trying to do is encapsulate the whole energy and recycling on site.
Electricity will be supplied via a gas-fired turbine, as well as solar and wind power to the 200 businesses expected to operate out of the estate. All water will also be recycled and reused on the site.
We think it's time that all levels of business becomes conscious on the environment, not just retail and commercial. We think industrial can take the same lead.
BuildDev is now negotiating a $400 million joint venture with CBD Energy to make the development possible. Once complete, Singleton Green is expected to set new standards for the Green Star energy rating system. Meanwhile, BuildDev is preparing to move into its own environmentally friendly premises at Wickham.
It'll be the greenest building in Newcastle to date. It'll have a 5-star rating. It's about 8 weeks from completion.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Chris Bailey knows the Knights will have their work cut out against Manly at Blue Tongue Stadium on Saturday night, but the game takes on a whole new complexity for the 5'8", who's preparing to switch camps next year. Despite that, he says he's got his priorities in order.
I want to finish off a good year here at the Knights, so that's all in the future. That and I'm not concerned with that yet. It's just about finishing off this year as good as we can.
He feels he has to prove himself to both sides.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they don't want to show them they bought a dud or anything like that.
Manly skipper Matt Orford hasn't written the Knights off, despite the loss of Badiris, Gidley and Cross to Origin duty.
They've still got Jared Mullen there, and they've got Chris Bailey, who's in fine form. So I think they're still quality players, and we definitely have to turn up with the right attitude.
Paul Lobb, NBN News. When you're hurtling down a narrow bush track at 180 kilometres an hour, a collision with a deer could prove fatal. The jury's still out on who had the biggest fright, Michael Guest or the deer.
The crazy part of you that makes you a racing car driver in the first place doesn't want you to slow down, so you're trying to keep it pegged and think, you know, what have I got to do here? And lucky the two deer that were on there, one went that way and eventually one went the other way. And
moving to Subaru after 2 years with Ford, Guest is shaping as a real contender. A podium finish in Queensland, missing first by just 12 seconds, has him well placed with still plenty of time left in the season.
Finished second both days up there in Queensland, and I think that leaves us third in the championship. So, yeah, a good bounce back from Rally Canberra. We hit a kangaroo in Canberra about 180 kilometres an hour, and that cost us a lot of points.
The next round will expose Guest to more wildlife in South Australia's Barossa Valley next month. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
I still want to keep going. You know, I love playing, and that feeling's just awesome. So, you know, I'll still go back and, you know, see what's going to happen in the future and just take it week by week.
Farmers won't often tell you they're doing well, but after surviving the drought, it seems the northern New South Wales dairy industry has finally turned a corner. After 10 years, milk is once again a valuable commodity.
There's a big demand for milk, and that's pushed prices up. Australia exports quite a lot of its dairy products, so you know, we're very much influenced by the world price.
Having completed the Cows Create Careers program, some of these students from Hunter High Schools are hoping dairy farming will always be a career choice. But with the price of fertiliser, diesel fuel and grain also on the rise, more tough times could lay ahead.
There's been a number of farmers have cut back because of the drought, so that has helped, but we're going to need continuing rises, otherwise we'll just get squeezed out of the industry.
The high cost of establishing a new farm could see the industry disappear from some parts of the state.
When our family first came there was about 60 dairy farms in the area, and we're now the last one in the Vasey area.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
The twisted and buckled iron shed is testament to the intense heat of last night's fire. It broke out about 10:30, just 10 minutes after intruder alarms were tripped. Inside, a collection of old and new equipment assembled over many years.
All the greens equipment, total. We've kept it all in that shed, anything from backhoe and bobcat to greens mowers, bunker rakes, fairway mowers, the whole lot, it's all gone.
Investigators scoured the site for clues today, but it's believed to have been the latest in a string of attacks by thieves and vandals. In past break-ins, stolen equipment has been used to damage the course. In one attack on the greens, vandals defecated in the holes.
I think that you get some people that just do this sort of thing for a bit of fun. You know, that's all I can put it down to. They've just wanted to do something, they're bored. It's very sad that we think that we have those people live in our community.
The club had only just repaired the damage caused by last year's June storm. Despite the setback, the course remains open for play, and neighbouring clubs have already offered their equipment to help maintain the course. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It was in the early hours of Friday the 16th of November last year when a 60-year-old taxi driver picked up two men from outside the Kent Hotel. A short time later, he was attacked inside his cab. Newcastle District Court was told Bo Mason wrapped his arms tightly around the driver's neck in a chokehold fashion from the back seat and said, "Give me your money, all you've got." Mason escaped with $65, but police soon caught up with him near the Broadmeadow railway station. In sentencing, Judge Hosking said taxi drivers provide an essential community service and are particularly vulnerable. Accordingly, they attract protection from the courts. He added the sentence should act as a general deterrent to others, as taxi drivers are considered easy targets to criminals. Judge Hosking stated that Mason should have received 4 years for the aggravated robbery. But due to an early guilty plea and the offender's lack of emotional control due to a neurological condition, he was given 18 months non-parole. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
This 1,000-lot estate could be one of the last built in the Upper Hunter. Escalating federal, state and local government taxes on new homes have made such projects unviable for developers.
We cannot make a new estate work. The feasibilities don't stack up, mainly due to the GST. So the only land we're developing is land that we bought quite a long time ago, but there's no new developments in the pipeline.
It's bad news for the thousands of people expected to move to places like Muswellbrook over the next 5 years, looking for work in the mines and a cheaper housing alternative to Sydney.
The only way that new land and housing can become viable is for a 30 to 50% increase in the end price, and people can't afford that.
But Muswellbrook Shire Council doesn't think housing affordability or availability will be an issue.
Obviously there'll be market pressures on that, but the land developers are releasing land and the uptake for houses is fairly strong in regards to that.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It's not the most romantic of sports, but in many ways the art of carrying a person at full speed around a gruelling obstacle course has many of the hallmarks of marriage. Perhaps that's why Australian champions Jason Doyle and Lanice Gardland are so good at it. They're both single. But there's no denying their friendship is full of admiration for each other.
Well, he runs pretty quick, so we won. We're going to Finland.
She's just right on weight and just absolutely perfect. So if we keep our balance, that's the main thing. So it's all about balance in this sport, I guess.
They entered the Aussie Wife Carrying Championships in Singleton just for a laugh and are tonight on a plane to the world titles.
Once in a lifetime thing to go over and represent Australian wife carrying.
Apparently the competition will be pretty tough.
These blokes are about a foot taller than me and carrying girls like Lanice, so they've got real long legs, real everything. It's going to be a real big challenge.
Jason apparently has no immediate plans to find a wife, but he certainly proved he can carry one. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
He's an unfamiliar face at training, but today Knights CEO Steve Burriston was casting a watchful eye over the troops he's trying to keep in business.
I thought very long and hard about coming out and saying this because of all the pressures on people, but it was Townsville that really gave me that injection.
Burriston says he understands families are facing increasing financial pressure, but a recent trip to Townsville sent alarm bells ringing. The Cowboys enjoy an average crowd of more than 21,000 in a city with a population of only 120,000. Compare that with the crowd that turned out to watch the Knights take on the league-leading Roosters on Sunday.
We got about 18,000 paying people through the gate, and I thought that was extremely disappointing, and it's the sort of day that we needed to achieve 23,000 to make things work for us.
The CEO believes the Knights have been forced to start looking at alternatives in order to stay afloat. Suggestions include taking less popular games to venues such as ANZ Stadium in Sydney to earn a bonus of around $200,000. Other proposals include a merger or relocation, possibly to the Central Coast, moves which guarantee an $8 million funding injection from the NRL.
I'm not saying that we're there, I'm saying it's a real possibility. If this is a sign of things that are going to come, then we will have to consider those things to survive.
Fans could get a taste of things to come this Saturday when the Knights face Manly in Gosford. Handling errors robbed Newcastle of a shot at victory against the Roosters last week, but the coach says he won't stifle his players' creativity.
You can't have it both ways. You can't be
You can't be trying to play a really attacking and entertaining brand of footy and then not expect your team to make errors.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. Our 4x100 metre relay team is ranked 12th in the world, but Athletics Australia doesn't believe it has enough quality runners to field a team in Beijing.
Electors don't believe this group of athletes is up to that standard. We know what Josh is capable of doing, we know what Patrick's capable of doing, but they're not the only ones. There are other athletes in that group, young athletes, who need to now step up to the mark.
The decision coming as a huge blow to hunter-bred runners Josh Ross and 2006 Sprinter of the Year Daniel Burgess.
It's certainly bad news for the people who have spent years, some at their own expense, in trying to qualify.
Ross has suffered through a disastrous season and Athletics Australia wasn't prepared to take a chance on his performance in China.
It's a question of whether you put someone in on the hope that they'll come good. We're trying to be even-handed with all of our athletes here. We're saying to everyone else, these standards are tough.
Bob Gulliver, a life member of the New South Wales Athletics League, believes questions must now be asked about the effectiveness of the well-funded Institute of Sport.
Perhaps they should be looking at the people who are getting the results and forming a academy with them in charge of the training of specialist sprinters.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
For 50 years, it's been the social hub of Dora Creek, but the suburb's only village store, cafe and service station burnt down about 4 o'clock this morning. Business owner Vicky Lucas was in the adjoining house when the flames took hold. She woke just in time to escape, and too distraught to speak today, she left the talking to her daughter Melissa.
She's devastated. She just lost everything. So that's her house and her business.
The blaze has shocked the tight-knit community.
I feel terrible. I feel sad.
It's a big loss. Big loss.
Viewing the aftermath today was single mum of 3, Kelly Paranihi, whose house at nearby Kurrambong was burnt out on Tuesday night. Vicky at the store had been helping gather money, clothes and other items to help Kelly, all of which went up in flames.
She had heaps of fundraising, organised signs, TV for me, and she was so worried about that. I just feel for her.
Both women are now living with relatives.
I haven't really cried for my own house. I'm crying for her.
Fire investigators who sifted through the charred remains today say the cause appears to be accidental. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
A men's toilet block, water tank and most recently playground equipment have all been targeted. Homemade bombs used to cause as much damage as possible to the council-owned amenities.
This is a complete and utter waste of ratepayers' money. We've had 3 events in the last 2 and a bit months which total something about $40,000.
Police say homemade explosives can be extremely volatile and are asking residents to keep an eye out for anyone acting suspiciously in Gregson Park at night.
We'd be very concerned about the safety of the people around the area, especially if one of them didn't detonate and was left there still in a virtual live state.
The repeated attacks have made park users wary.
I don't know if I'll be bringing the kids back down here now.
Well, I think it's a little bit scary from a mum's perspective that this sort of stuff's going on.
I think it's crazy that people can go around and think they can destroy things willy-nilly.
And it's not the first time the suburb has been targeted this year. 3 months ago, an explosive device was detonated outside a martial arts business, while another homemade bomb was planted inside a letterbox. Police are investigating whether the incidents are linked.
We wouldn't definitely rule it out, but at this stage there appears to be nothing that links to the events.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
24-year-old Christopher Svetkovsky ran away from the John Hunter Hospital last August while he was an inmate at Cessnock Prison. He was recaptured at Redhead the next day. In sentencing submission, Svetkovsky's own defence today described the escape as ill-planned, ill-advised and unsuccessful. He was in custody for breaching parole after robbing tellers at the New Lambton ANZ branch of $1,800 earlier that month. The court was told it was mostly spent on the drug ice and to repay drug debts. Svetkovski was a professional soccer player, trialling for English club Middlesbrough. He was offered a trial with the Newcastle Jets but gave it all up for his ice habit after becoming a daily user at just 16. In sentencing, Judge Hoskins said the offender had a significant criminal history that had paid for his addiction and gambling habits. He recommended Svetkovski urgently be referred to a prison rehabilitation service and receive help for a mental health problem. Noting an early guilty plea, he was sentenced to 3 years all up, but with time already served, he'll be eligible for parole the day before his 26th birthday. Svetkovski looked relieved after sentencing. His family believes there is still time to salvage his overseas soccer career as long as he shakes the drug habit. And his uncle has already offered him employment at his South Coast hairdressing salon. Penny Evans, NBN News.
And we can process pension claims much more quickly, and it's just going to help us immensely with the work that we're doing in support of widows.
Adam McDougall didn't train yesterday and wasn't thought to be of a real concern.
Hopefully he'll be okay tomorrow. If he doesn't improve, it'll be a concern, but it's not at this stage.
But no one trained today, with coach Brian Smith giving the side a day off before tomorrow's match to help freshen them up, with McDougall's fitness to be monitored. There's 3 regulars who won't be there, but the less said about Origin around Steve Simpson, probably the better.
It's not my focus at the moment. I'm really focused on the game on Saturday night, so looking forward to that.
Omitted from the interstate decider, he'll lead Newcastle tomorrow night against Manly, and that suits the club just fine.
That's a really powerful weapon for us to have this weekend. We need some experienced leadership.
Dan Toller hopes he can bring a bit of both to the table as well after missing last week with a rib problem.
Losing 3 big players takes a lot out of the team, but the boys know we've got to lift this week, and we'll come out and do that.
The game also interesting for those who aren't saying much in the lead up to this one. Danny Wicks returns to the venue where he scored that try, while former knight Josh Perry meets his old club after that forgettable first outing earlier in the season.
He didn't have a happy game last one, but his form over the last few weeks has been really good, so he should be fired up, I'd say.
As CEO of Newcastle University Sport Facilities, Samantha Martin-Williams knows a thing or two about business and sport, and that earned her a seat on the new state-backed authority.
I really do think it's a representative group that will plan and consult and develop the area well.
The authority effectively consolidates previous administrations which looked after the Entertainment Centre, Newcastle Showground and Energy Australia Stadium with its surrounding Crown land. It's what to do with it all, which is the overriding brief, with the area viewed to become an internationally regarded sport and entertainment precinct.
Only imagination and will restrict us there.
Joining Ms Williams is Sheridan Ferrier from Hunter Regional Tourism and Indigenous Business Australia's Leah Armstrong. Former Hunter Business Chamber President Steve Davis and barrister Andrew Bright fill out the 6-member board to be chaired by Ted Atchison from the former ISC Trust.
It's a unique parcel of land to have in the centre of a city, and it can be the home bush of Newcastle, if you like.
Neither of the stadium's two major tenants, the Newcastle Knights, nor their A-League counterparts, the Jets, have earned a seat on the authority, nor have the major tenants of the Newcastle Showground, but all have been assured they'll still have a voice.
It's important that the Knights and the Jets and other users of these facilities are involved in the future planning. You can't operate at that level and do it independently of the users.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Whether it was on the dance floor or using artificial intelligence to trace a carefully laid out map, these robots and the brilliant young minds behind them proved a huge success at this year's Junior Robo Cup. The aim of the competition is fairly basic.
Just simply to introduce them to technology, right, and to provide a challenge for them in the classroom.
And while rivalry was fierce, with dozens of robots hedged against each other, students were full of admiration of each other's work. This car, a clear crowd favourite in the robotic dance-off.
We spent a lot of time after school just programming it. It takes a long time, and 10 pages of just which motors go where and stuff.
With robotics becoming an increasingly popular field, RoboCup is now played in over 30 countries. But today's competition wasn't without a bit of drama, the wheels literally falling off this operation.
Then I found out I was on the wrong program, so I had to reprogram it. Then the wheels came off, then the wheels were the wrong size. So now I'm just hoping that the next try is better.
Are you going to make it?
Hope so.
Although that hope proved a bit optimistic. But whether things went according to plan or not, the audience sat in awe of the clever robot creators.
Just awesome. A lot of them, I don't know how they've done it.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
So we need massive rollout of alternative energy sources. We need government investment. We need government to facilitate this to happen. We need the big plan.
Residents fear their tranquil lifestyle at Marmong Point could be lost if a proposal to expand this marina goes ahead. The development includes increasing the number of berths from 160 to 245, the creation of 110 storage berths, as well as a cafe, restaurant and day spa. Today, residents met with Greg Piper to express their concerns before a development application is lodged with the state government in about 6 weeks.
And I think it's far too big already.
More importantly, traffic management is a real issue.
So it certainly was worthwhile to get out here and meet these people, start hearing some of their concerns, but obviously we do need to wait for an application to be prepared, and we'll address it formally at that stage.
In an unexpected move, marina developer Les Binkin also attended the meeting, upsetting some residents.
He's just doing his thing without consulting with the public. We'd like him to consult more and come up with a bit of compromise.
But Mr Binkin says the proposal's already taken residents' concerns into account.
We're hoping to minimise compromise because we've already thought about it and we've already tried to not put things up that people won't want to see in their area.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
We were in a position where we didn't need him again for the immediate couple of games that followed his debut, but I got nothing but confidence, and so has he.
Rep duty and injury has limited Vern Moana Mason's time at Cessnock this season, but he was quickly making up for it, scoring 2 tries in less than 10 minutes. Shifted to the centres, he was terrorising Wyong's edge, and if not for some forward passes, the home side could well have built on its 8-0 lead. Instead, it was Wyong to score next after Dean Amos put Brent Murray through. It was the Roos who had a case of dropsy when the try line beckoned soon after. From that to this, and a stunning solo effort from Chris Pine as the competition's leading try scorer added to his tally. It was pretty willing after half-time too. Mark White soon seeing red after his effort was called back for obstruction, the third try Cessnock had disallowed. It took a while, but the home side finally got through, with Pine touching down for try number 20 for the year. Holding a 12-point lead, it should have been enough, but the Roos bounced back into contention with some attacking flair of their own. Jamie Batty giving Cessnock some much-needed breathing space as they ended up 17-14 winners.
Crowds poured through Fort Scratchley's gates as they opened to the public for the first time in 4 years. Today's official handover proceedings began with a military procession led by the Australian Army Band's Newcastle, followed by the Australian Federal Guard. Before the fort was given to the people of Newcastle, its history dating back to the 1800s was outlined, in particular the role it played during World War II when it was used to defend the city against a Japanese submarine attack. Several attendees recalled the event.
The shelter going right over here toward BHP, you know. The sergeant one behind, he said, "Don't worry about the shells you can hear, they're already gone. It's the ones you can't hear."
Everything just went into an upheaval into everything. Just very frightening, very frightening.
Then came the moment we've waited 12 years for. The occasion suitably marked by a firing of the guns. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
If there's ever a time Chris Houston wants to make sure he's fit to play, it's this week. One of 4 Knights to come from the Dragons this season. He's long been looking forward to their clash.
There have a few texts and voicemails left getting into each other, but it's all fun rivalry.
There's one in particular he's keen to run into.
I used to live with Dan Hunt when I was down there, so if I get him in the tackle, there'll be a bit of spray going in his ear.
Denny Wicks and Wes Nguama will have their own points to prove given respective departures from their old club, but there's a former Knight who's sure to be on the same wavelength. Kirk Reynoldson only settled a long-running contract dispute with Newcastle a matter of weeks ago and now plays with St George Illawarra. It has all the hallmarks of a major crowd puller, and if not, it'll be Newcastle CEO Steve Burriston who'll have a real issue on his hands.